Well, howdy, friends. This is your pal, Captain Ted, here, wishing you a good day. I have a little unusual topic today, but because of my lifelong career as an airline pilot, I do feel like I need to speak out about this Air India disaster. Happened a little over a week ago, and because of the lack of all the proper release of data yet from the flight data recorder, the so-called black box, we're still speculating. There's a lot of wild speculating going on. So if you would let me, I would like to present to you some facts as I see them and also as a veteran Air India pilot looks at, which I tend to agree largely with what he said. I'd like to show you on a map here. We skip right to the heart of the matter. The airport where the airplane departed from on a trip, a 9.5 hour flight, roughly 10-hour flight to London, nonstop from India. If you look at this airport runway, I'm going to step back here to show you, but if you can see, the runway is here on this airport, surrounded by all the metropolitan area, international terminal here. So the aircraft would have started here. Now, it was parked here for 3 hours, over 3 hours delay, so actually more than 3 hours. But the sun, blazing hot sun, arose, and it was 1:30 in the afternoon before they took off. But just a crucial point to know here, the first fact is that the airplane, when it left the terminal, had to taxi down a taxiway here. This is known as a parallel taxiway, turn right, and then turn onto the actual runway because there's no more taxiway there, and has to taxi all the way back to the beginning, to the starting end of the runway up here, which would give him the full length of the runway, 11,500 feet, which is quite a long runway. So he would have to do all this taxiing back here, turn around at the end, and then start his takeoff roll from here. And if he went all the way down here before to the end here, this is 2,000-foot threshold here. But at the end of the runway, there's what they call an overrun, which is really not a smooth area. It's just sort of an asphalt, not a really paved, heavy stressed concrete like the runway. But then he would lift off, and then there's all this area of dirt right here. So this is very important to know. And once they took off, then they were able to fly down, and they never gained much altitude and they never gained much speed. But this is very critical to know, just the layout of the runway, because the crucial point is at what point did the pilot start the takeoff roll? I have not really heard an official comment. And did he take the full length, to use the full length available to him if he had gone all the way to the end, or did he come from an earlier place, turn around and try to start? This is a question, but we have more. Let's go to one of the actual Air India captains now. He's going to tell you his opinion on what happened.
Shots of this area, it's very built up. There's a small patch of kind of grass, and then that is where Chris says the pilot looks like he was aiming for.
And this was an eyewitness to the crash, young boy. But now we're going to hear the captain's testimony now.
It's because of him that you are alive.
Chris says many more would have died if the pilot had hit these buildings. Indian aviation expert Captain Mohan Ranganathan is looking closely at the conditions that day.
So what's your current thinking on what might have gone wrong here?
So with the CCTV footage, just after 16 seconds, he starts rotating. And you can see the nose coming up ahead of the building, which is there in the video. And 1 second later, you can see the yawing to the right, which indicates that there's been an engine failure on the right side.
So would one engine failing cause the second engine to fail?
Only if the second engine had also sucked in debris. See, there's a lot of grass, and you have birds there, and it may not be quite a bit of debris, but it is not paved, it is not covered with grass. So with full thrust on the Dreamliner engines, it can suck in any loose soil.
This is just one theory of many circulating. Indian and
So there you have it. This is the Air India captain himself, one of them giving his theory that the right engine failed during the takeoff run, leaving them only one engine, which should have been adequate, plenty of power. I talked to a Dreamliner training captain here that I know. He trains in the simulator basically every day, and he said that they ran simulations last week, and there's plenty of power to still fly on one engine. But what he talked about, and I want to reemphasize, if the airplane went past the pavement or was even very low, had not just barely gotten off the ground by the end of the pavement of the runway, there's grass, he said, and other debris, but there's rocks and other things that will be ingested, sucked in by the good engine and would have caused damage whereby the power was lost. So that's called FOD, foreign object debris. Now that may have done both engines if the other right engine was still producing power. But because he mentioned about the landing gear has a double bogey wheels and the nose gear also could kick up dirt and dust. But what you don't see in that video was about 5 seconds before that video started, when the plane was low, just breaking ground, lifting off the runway, there was a cloud of dust kicked up, which you can see in all the other videos. So here's the big one. Why didn't the plane climb on one engine, or why was the landing gear not retracted, which is normal procedure still for pilots in that case? And why were they all the way at the end of an 11,500 foot runway and not well off the ground, one engine or two engine? This is the big question, because if things were planned right and properly done, there should have been adequate power and safety margin. That's why we operate everything with safety margin on a heavy duty international aircraft. So if they had gone all the way to the end, the departure end, which have not seen myself any evidence that they did do that or didn't do that. I'm not going to speculate. I'm just giving my opinion as a pilot that's done this a lot on heavy aircraft, L1011, DC-10-30, the Airbus A330, Boeing 767. I've flown them all. So let's look at this now. They've talked about flap setting could have been wrong, but if you did not have the flaps extended and properly set, you would have a warning horn, which when you advance the throttles, it's going to give you warning. You cannot really ignore it. It's so loud. And so did they just do it to ignore the warning horn? Or my friend, the training captain in the sim, said that they tried. Now they used the -9 series, the later series of the 787. This is a -8. It's an older model, but not that much difference in them. But they did it with no flaps, with partial flaps, whatever. The plane flew fine. But now we're going to talk about something else: the temperature, the conditions at the field. You see also that they were not departing on their normal time. They were delayed by 3 hours from what report I know. So what happened in those 3 hours, and why was it delayed 3 hours? But was there other equipment failures? We call the minimum equipment list. Was the electrical system causing problems? Was the APU, the power unit generator, auxiliary generator on the ground, providing air? Other systems, hydraulic system, which gets us into other emergency procedures and things that you would do if you had an engine failure at the V1 cut speed. We call that V1. is when we reach a speed that we cannot safely stop the plane. If we have an emergency, we have to continue if we have an engine out. So they were past V1 and they had an engine failure. They still should have rotated and gotten off way before they are seen doing that, in my opinion. Was it the temperature? It was extremely hot. They were taking off way later in the day than they normally did. Were scheduled to. They were supposed to get off in the morning about 10:30. They didn't get off till 1:30 in the afternoon. It was blazing hot, and I believe this same captain, I've seen him on an earlier video, they were talking about the temperature, and they've been reporting that it was 37 degrees centigrade, which is about 98 or 100, somewhere there. But actually, another man, he said it was the tower, said it was 42 or 43 degrees in the tower centigrade, which is 110, 115. And then on the runway, it could have been way hotter than that. All of that reduces the thrust. The air is thinner, harder for the engine to produce thrust, harder for the wing to generate lift. You need more speed. And the weight, what was the weight of the airplane? Obviously very heavy due to a 10-hour international flight to London. A lot of fuel, a lot of passengers, a lot of freight, cargo. What was the actual weight and balance on the plane? Was there an error in calculating that? Was the max takeoff weight exceeded? Did the crew enter the wrong data into the flight computer on the plane about weight and balance? That does happen. That affects everything, your speeds, your thrust of the engines. So now the blaming Boeing part I don't agree with. I mean, there's no facts so far to state that it was an aircraft failure. And there's no evidence yet really definitive of anything except that the mere fact that they were very, very low and slow at the end of the runway where they should have been flying and they were not.